Good afternoon, Who Dat Nation, and happy week one to our Bayou Blitz family. And if you're really down on things right now, just look at it this way, folks. 17 weeks goes fast, so you only have 17 more weeks to wait. But I am Bob Rose. That is Brendan Boylan, and we are your Bayou Blitz Week 1 post-game show. We're here to give you the what happened and why it happened and what should have happened in the Saints-Cardinals Week 1 matchup, which resulted in a 20-13 Arizona Cardinals victory in the Superdome over the New Orleans Saints on Sunday, September 7th, 2025. Brendan, happy week one.
I like the fact that you did a whole timestamp for this, just in case anybody stumbles upon this 50 years from now and is like, But yeah, happy week one. To be frank, I'm not really surprised by anything. We'll get into that. There was a lot of things that were expected. There was a lot of mishaps that were expected. To go back to your favorite saying, it's an extension of the preseason,
and a lot of mishaps that weren't expected.
Sure, and I think a lot of that was evident today. That it's an extension of the preseason. I think a lot of it was evident because you have a new offense and a new defense. I think so much of the offseason was focused around the quarterbacks that a lot of people forget that it's not just a new defensive coordinator, it's a whole new system going from the 4-3 to the 3-4.
Yeah.
So there are things there. Ultimately, I want to start with what everyone wants to talk about, and that's the end of the game. So we're going to work backwards today, Bob. But the end of the game, Saints defense makes a big stop. Alontae Taylor stacks Kyler Murray, where that's been a bright spot. Alontae Taylor blitzing from that slot cornerback position the last 2 years. That has been a bright spot. And it became very evident that Kyler Murray liked to escape the pocket going over his right shoulder, meaning opposed to running to the right. He liked to try to extend the play by almost making a half spin and flipping his hips and going to the left. Alontae read that, made the sack, and the Saints got to play a little 2-minute drill with Spencer Rattler, which I think is very valuable experience for Rattler. Now, some of you are going to come back and say, well, he started 6 games last year. You look at the Washington game last year where the Saints did march down the field and score, and opposed to going for the tie and going for overtime, they go for 2 and they drop the game. But I thought, 2-minute drill with no timeouts was very valuable for Spencer Rattler. Now, the Chris Olave catch, no catch decision, I always think it's funny, Bob, because this happens every time in the booth, right? They're sitting there and they're talking about the play, and they give their thoughts on it. And they're like, let's bring in Gene Steratore, our officiating and rules expert. Gene, what did you see on that play? And Gene's like, guys, I saw a catch. Thanks, Gene. Let's go down to the field. Okay, no catch. The call is overturned. And that's the thing with the overturn as well on that. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because at the end of the day, would it have made a huge difference? We don't know. I think it could have, because you would have had 1st and 10 from the opponent's 46 instead of 2nd and 10 from your own 46. You would have saved time as well because of the 2 plays that happened after that, which was a Spencer Rattler scramble for about 8 yards. And then you hit Brandon Cooks on an out route where he is able to get out of bounds. And that's a smart play by a veteran to get up and get out of bounds on that play. But how can you overturn something? Because you need clear and conclusive evidence to overturn. And I understand that they have more camera angles than CBS has. But how was that not? It never touched the ground.
It still hasn't touched the ground. It did not. The ball did not touch the ground until Olave handed it back to the official, and the official spotted it for the next play. It was right up there with the biggest horseshit calls I have ever seen in my 350 years of watching Pee Wee, high school, college, and professional football. I I agree with you. That it didn't necessarily cost the Saints the game, but we don't know that it didn't cost the Saints the game. It definitely put the team in a position that they shouldn't have been in because it was a catch. Goodell and his goons, it can manipulate the space time continuum, the Earth's axis. Call National Football League games in Europe, South America, and everything else. But physics are physics, and that was a freaking catch.
I like what one of the announcers said. I don't know if it was Logan Ryan, which shout out to him, former player, 11-year defensive back who made his broadcast debut today. I thought he did a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe he was the one who said it even looked like a football move, whatever that is. And we've talked about that for years too, whatever a football move is, because it looked like he got it, started making it, maybe bobbled it a little bit, but regathered and then fell. So when you have a former NFL player, a guy who played 11 years in the league, as a defensive back, say, no, that's a catch, I think that's all you need to know. But anyway, the Saints end up getting an opportunity. They get a couple shots at the end zone late, including a really well-thrown ball by Spencer Rattler up the seam to Juwan Johnson. Johnson gets both hands on it and going to the ground, falls on his back. The ball gets jarred loose. Whether Buda Baker or another defensive back got his hand in there, I don't know. But we'll count it as a drop, even though I'm going to give him some grace. That was a hard catch to make anyway. In double, triple coverage. It's even harder for a guy who's 6'5", 6'6", and 260 pounds coming down with the ball and landing on your back and still being able to keep control amongst all the chaos. So unfortunate, because I think everybody on the field thought it was a catch for a millisecond or two, and it would have been a great way to cap that off. And then the final play didn't even give Olave a chance. Didn't love that play call. Didn't love the throw either.
No.
I would have almost wanted to just say, just do it again. They know it's coming. Juwan's the biggest guy on the field. Just throw it up the seam to Juwan and just give him a shot. If it gets picked, it gets picked.
Yeah.
But that's how the game ended. I thought you saw a lot of composure in that final drive out of Spencer Rattler. I think there were some questionable throws throughout the game and a couple almost picks thrown by Rattler, but it looked like he was pretty comfortable with the up-tempo, and then he was able to keep his cool in a moment where the Saints needed his best, and you were just a catch in the end zone by Juwan Johnson away from giving yourself an opportunity to either go for the victory, very similar to what they did against Washington last year, or kick a field goal and try to take it to overtime. Outside of the Olave catch, no catch, what were your thoughts of that final drive?
I agree with you. I thought Spencer played some pretty composed football. The receivers seem to thrive in that up tempo too. Not only that drive, but a couple drives that they ran it earlier in the game. Where they moved the football. I think they only put points on the board. In one of those drives, but they still showed the ability to move the football on short and intermediate throws. I was pretty frustrated by Rattler throughout the game, at his either inability or unwillingness to take downfield shots. I'm not talking necessarily deep shots. I'm just downfield throws, deep crossers, deep outs, things like that. I'd like to see that worked into the game plan, in the upcoming weeks. But I thought that Spencer Rattler did play his best football of the game. Really in the final two drives, from the Saints, and that's got to be a positive if you're going to take anything. There wasn't a lot of positive things to take away from this game. There were a few, but I thought that Rattler's composure down the stretch, and his accuracy, with the exception of the final throw, corner throw, to Olave. I thought Spencer's accuracy, was pretty solid too. Make no mistake, folks. For any quarterback, let alone a young one, being accurate in times like that, when your heart and blood pressure is going 1,000 miles an hour, everything else around you is going 1,000 miles an hour. It is tough to throw dimes, to throw the ball with accuracy, and positions for your receivers to make plays, et cetera. That's all the more reason to just marvel at the last second abilities, late game heroics of the Joe Montanas, John Elways, Drew Breeses, of the world. And by no means am I putting Spencer Rattler in that category. I just I came away impressed, by his composure and the ability to move the team, when the team needed it the most.
Let's go from the end of the game to the beginning of the game. I think one thing that is still concerning is the lack of ability to score points, right? In Rattler's 6 starts last year, the team averaged just under 13 points per game. Today, they get the same mark. Inefficient in the red zone, as they were 1 of 4. Third down, they were about 33%. Fourth down, they were about 50%. But I think a lot of that is due to the fact that they had a tough time outside of the moments that they went up tempo. They had a tough time getting in rhythm and getting the ball in the hands of the playmakers, right? Rashid Shaheed's first touch came on the first snap of the second half, right? They run a little, I don't know what you want to call it nowadays. Is it a jet sweep? Is it a touch pass? I don't know. Whatever you want to call it, it is what it is. And that was his first touch of the game. Alvin Kamara finished with 13 carries and 2 receptions, so under 15 total touches for Alvin Kamara. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact, what I'm about to throw on the screen, 13 penalties in the game for 89 yards. Not, the yardage important, not as important as the 13 penalties. Just that statistic. I would be willing to bet about half of them, 40 to 50% of them, were pre-snap penalties on the offense. And what does that do to you, Bob? And they talked about it on the broadcast for those of you who watched it from home or a bar or wherever you watched the game. It is a lot different to be 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 15. It is a lot different to be 3rd and 8 versus 3rd and 13. And I think they found themselves so far behind the sticks at some points in the game that any play where it was, hey, let's involve Alvin Kamara, let's give the ball to Kamara, kind of got crumpled up and thrown out the door because you can't at that point. You're hoping to split them out wide. There was a couple things that I really liked in this game that they did with Alvin Kamara early. Looking at the first quarter and some of the second quarter, I saw Alvin Kamara motion out. I saw Alvin Kamara run routes as a receiver for the first time in a long time. There was one play out of the shotgun, split backs. Rattler motions Kamara out for like a screen, like a quick screen, and ends up giving the ball to Kendre Miller on his left. And that was something we talked about earlier in the week, is Kendre Miller's going to be important to this thing too, because the more eyes and the more feet that follow Kamara out for that potential swing pass, the less that are there for Kendre Miller. And we saw some good moments from Kendre Miller, and that was exciting. But because the Saints were playing from behind for a lot of this game, because the Saints were behind the sticks for a lot of this game because of self-inflicted wounds, what happens? A lot of those things come out of your playbook, and now you're forcing Rattler to make plays and find guys like Jawan Johnson or find guys like Chris Olave. Johnson appeared to be his safety net throughout the game, which I like. And you and I have spoke so highly about Jawan for the last 3 years. I like being able to see a breakout game or a breakout performance out of him like this. I don't know if I want to see these numbers for Jawan all year, because it means there was a lot of checkdowns. It means there was a lot of Rattler having to scramble and get creative and find someone. And Jawan is a big target, so I understand why all that happened. But I don't want to see that a whole lot moving forward, and I do want to see more involvement out of 41-5 in the games ahead.
Not only 41-5, but Shaheed too, number 22. I want to see more quality touches out of Olave. Not just the stop routes. For 6 or 8 yards. Basically a safety valve or a check down play for Rattler, where the ball is or the play is not literally going to go any longer than just that. Um, I thought the game plan itself uh, did a poor job of utilizing all the playmakers that we just mentioned. Is Shaheed, Olave, Kamara. Um, it showed promise with formations and motion. Uh, Penalties, I agree with you, had a lot to do with that. Not only the pre-snaps, false starts, illegal motion, illegal shifts, but the holding penalties too. We just mentioned how not only Rattler, but I blame it on Kellen Moore in the game plan too. The inability / unwillingness to go down the field. Well, once you fall behind the sticks, when you have a pretty conservative or at least close to the vest game plan, you're not going to be able to sustain drives. That way. And I mean, it's a learning experience. This offense is still feeling each other out. The players and coaches are. Uh, but I would certainly like to see a more widely diverse game plan in the subsequent weeks. Because the glimpses that we did see of it, like you said, the motion, the formations, the usage of Kendre Miller, which I'm waiting to see the snap counts, but I would venture a guess that this was one of Kendre Miller's most active outings as a pro. Now one game into his third year, and to be able to utilize such weapons as Kendre and Alvin in the backfield at the same time, and all the speed you have on the outside with Olave, Shaheed, Cooks, who made a couple decent receptions too. You have the ability to really threaten defenses, not just vertically, but sideline to sideline with the athleticism and the shiftiness of all those guys. And if you're able to do that, that's going to open up your middle more. For players like Jawan Johnson, like Devon Villay, who only had one catch. I mean, if you're going to be critical of Rattler, and I know some of you are, if you're going to be critical of Rattler, you have to be at least as critical of Kellen Moore in the play calling.
I agree. I am concerned about the lack of ability in the red zone, right? And I'll throw those numbers up here for you guys. There's your red zone third down and fourth down numbers for the day. 25% in the red zone, concerning. Yeah, a couple of those you were able to get field goals out of it, but actually 3 times you at least walked away with a field goal attempt, right? The other 3 right there, where you were in the red zone, you walked away with a field goal attempt. 2 were good, one was not. It's frustrating. It's frustrating that it seems, even going back to last year, and it's hard to judge last year because so many guys were hurt, but there wasn't a go-to red zone piece, right? And I just criticized the lack of use of the playmakers. Why can't we get creative in the red zone? 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. Why can't we get creative and try to run a receiver screen to Shaheed? Run a quick halfback swing screen, whatever you want to call it, out to Kamara, or some of the old Sean Payton screens that seemed like they took forever to develop, but they were late developing screens. And you do that for a reason. You try to get as many pass rushers into the face of the quarterback and hope you can dump it out the back. Why can't we get creative like that? The first touchdown for Arizona, we saw one of the most simple concepts in offensive football, right? They call it a man beater for a reason, and it is. That's the mesh route. I didn't see a whole lot of that going on. I just felt like it was so vanilla, and some of that is allowing your quarterback to learn a new system in the first week. So I don't want to be too critical, but it was almost so vanilla it hurt you.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt. But some of the red zone stuff goes back to last year. There was somebody in the comments, I want to make sure I give them credit. I'd mentioned this stat earlier. already, but Ray said, this is a guy in Spencer Rattler who's only averaging about 12 points per game as a starter. Yeah, that goes back to last year. I'd mentioned that earlier. They were right under 13. They scored 13 today.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that's the red zone inefficiency. I gotta see moving forward something. And, like I said, some of that is new offense. Some of that is on Kellen Moore for not getting some of those playmakers involved. But I expected that, right? I didn't expect this to be a team that came out like they did last year and just light a team up. If they were going to win this game, I think Bob and I both said something about the Saints scoring 21, 22 points in this game and potentially coming out to win if you go back and listen to Wednesday's broadcast. That's what I expected. And they left some points on the table. Obviously, the final drive and the groupie miss. But ultimately, unfortunately for some Saints fans, this is not the offense of old. We're going to see this team go light teams up. They're going to rely on their defense. They're going to rely on strategic offensive play calling, which we didn't see a whole lot of today.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see what happens. But I do want to talk about that defense, Bob. Do you have any more offensive thoughts?
Just going back to to the red zone inefficiencies and specifically the last play to Olave. Now I'm a huge fan of Chris Olave as a receiver, but that's not the receiver that I want to throw that ball to on that play in that situation. The receiver that I want to throw the ball to is not on the roster. Those are the plays that Jimmy Graham made, that Michael Thomas made, that Marcus Colston made. The closest big-bodied playmaker you have in that situation is Juwan Johnson, and that's not Juwan's kind of route. So it is very clear that and this is something that we were concerned about all off season. It is very clear that the offense is missing a big-bodied, reliable, intermediate playmaker. Because those are your biggest, most dangerous weapons in the red zone. So, you're not a magician and you can't conjure one up now. Maybe Vele turns out to be that kind of guy. Who knows? But I mean, if he doesn't, or assuming he doesn't, then you have to curtail your offense, your play calls, your game plan to what your people do best. And I did not think that Kellen Moore did a good job of that today whatsoever.
I agree. Let's talk about the defense. You want to talk about the perfect tone setter to start the Staley era as the defensive coordinator, to start the Kellen Moore era. And man, that was that first drive for the defense. They came out and they looked different. They looked angry. They played with aggression. What's the one thing we said throughout the draft process? They brought in a lot of guys that were aggressive, downhill defenders, and we saw that right from the jump. I'm sure all of us were. I could not have thought of a better guy to come up with a big sack on the first drive of the game than Cameron Jordan, a guy who struggled a lot statistically last season.
Mm-hmm. Last 2 years, really.
Really. Well, last year especially, only 4 sacks for Cam last year. A guy who loves the city, loves the team, very emotional, but a guy who never seemed to get too low. But I remember one specific moment last year. It was here in my hometown after a loss in Carolina where he veered off separate from the team walking through the tunnel. And you can just see the frustration on Cam's face. So to see him come out and record 1.5 sacks today, but really set the tone from the jump, I think that was needed, and it was the perfect way to kind of start the game for the Saints, right? I wish it would have held up, but in all honesty, the defense didn't have a bad game. There was a couple moments, particularly when the Cardinals had the ball inside their own 5, and it was 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 7, and Eadom slips. And even if he didn't slip, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. probably gets the first down. But to not come up in that moment where you would have had a punt from inside their own end zone and given yourself really short field, you can nitpick some things like that. You can nitpick the deep ball for 45 plus yards to Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, Kyler Murray had 35 rushing yards or somewhere in that neighborhood. But I thought they contained him for the most part. They made him uncomfortable. They got to him a couple times. James Conner, who I thought was going to be a real difference maker in this game, did not have a great game. He wasn't even the team's leading rusher in this game. I thought there were good things from the defense. And I think you mentioned there's not a whole lot of positives to take away from today, but I think that is my biggest takeaway from today is that the defense looked better than I expected against a very athletic quarterback and against one of the best tight ends in football who had a very quiet second half and fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And against one of the more up and coming wide receivers. And Kool-Aid had his ups and downs too, but I totally expected that for a guy who's making such a jump into being the number one corner. So I took more positives from the defense than I did the offense in this game. But it was nice to see the building blocks that they made and those selections in the draft. You can definitely see the type of player they were targeting and why they targeted those players today.
Yeah, and I think the defense being without Chase Young, whether you like him or hate him, the one thing that you can't say about Chase Young is he's athletic. When you're going up against an athletic quarterback such as Kyler Murray, who might be the most athletic quarterback in the NFL. If he's not, he's the most athletic, not named Lamar Jackson. Chase would have. I would rather have Chase pursuing Kyler Murray than Mike Rumpf. And there's your difference in the ball game right there. But I agree. I didn't think Kyler had a couple runs. That kept the drive going, but he didn't go nuts. Cam and Carl Granderson and to a lesser extent Brian Bresee kept Kyler Murray uncomfortable all day. I know he was 21 of 29. But only for 163 yards, and one of those was a 45-yard completion to Harrison, as you said. Those are pretty good statistics, to have against a quarterback. The Cardinals had 146 yards rushing on the ground and 5.4 per carry. Part of that is Murray, as you would expect, but you take away the 52-yard broken tackle run that Benson had, and you're holding the Cardinals to below 100 yards on the ground and around 4 yards per carry. That's a hell of a lot better than we saw out of this run defense last year. They need to do better on third downs, especially in key moments. There's no question. They need to tackle better. I mentioned the broken tackle on Benson's long run. McBride, a couple plays in the first half, one back-breaking third down in particular. 3 missed tackles. You have to do a better job, and that's execution. I know some of you want to blame the entire world's problems on coaching, and I get that. But the players, as I'm fond of saying, the players have to execute on the field, and that's poor exit. When you tackle poorly, that's on the players. But schematically, I did like Brandon Staley's approach. Kool-Aid McKinstry. You say up and down. I'll just come out and say I thought Kool-Aid McKinstry had a rough afternoon. He made a couple nice plays. The pass interference on him early in the game was complete bullshit. But we know in Goodell's era and the NFL, you're going to have that. With certain teams, certain players, etc. I'm not worried about Kool-Aid. I think he'll bounce back. He'll have more good afternoons than bad. Cam looked like he dipped his toe into the fountain of youth. Demario Davis had a nice afternoon. Not great, but nice. They're going to have to generate turnovers, though, Brendan. We said that the key to this game would be the Saints defense coming in. I predicted a Saints victory behind 4 or 5 sacks and at least 2 turnovers. Well, they got 5 sacks, but there were only really 3 real ones. And they didn't get any turnovers. They had a couple close calls. Good defenses will convert those close calls into momentum changing turnovers. But there were a lot of good things to take away from this. I mean, we mentioned the run defense, the pass defense. You controlled not only McBride, but you controlled Harrison in the second half too. And those are going to be Kyler Murray's two biggest weapons, throughout this NFL season are going to be Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. And, after they riddled you throughout the first half, you did a nice job of containing them in the second half. You got off the field in the second half. Now the one drive that you mentioned started at the Arizona 5-6 yard line. They need to get off the field quicker than what they did then. But you can, I still believe coming out of this game that however many games the Saints win over the first half of the year, it's going to be more defensively than on the offensive side.
Absolutely. And shout out, I know we already touched a little bit on special teams with groupies miss, but shout out to Brian Bresee for blocking the kick, because if he doesn't, and that's good, the Saints don't even have a chance to win the game at the end. So a shout out there. I was interested to see where Bresee was going to play and how he was going to play. I thought he looked good. But and unfortunately, a lot of times, and we know this because the Saints have drafted 1,000 offensive linemen in the last 10 years. But a lot of times you expect your first-round picks to be the quote-unquote sexy pick and make a lot of big plays and whatnot. And I think Brian Bresee is very much a lunch pail type of guy. There's going to be games he pops up on the stat sheet or he makes a big play. But for the most part, he's going to do the little things that help you win and lose in the trenches. And I thought today he had a lot more good than he did bad. And he made a difference. And I'm happy about that, because what's the one thing I said throughout the offseason? I didn't know where he fit in this scheme or how he was going to fit. He proved me wrong that he could play in a couple different spots and still make an impact. So I was happy with that. To close out, I'm going to throw some numbers at you guys, and then we'll both give some final thoughts. And that is the Cardinals were 6 of 13 on third down. Bob had mentioned getting off the field. Earlier. I think that is a prime example of that. The Cardinals were able to sustain drives, and that kind of goes hand in hand with a third down efficiency. Time of possession 33-46 for Arizona, 26-14 for New Orleans. It felt more lopsided than that. I felt like the game went by pretty quick, and I think a lot of it was, especially in the first half, it just felt like Arizona had the ball a lot. Saints did a better job in the second half. Penalties, 9 for Arizona for 54 yards. We already talked about the Saints, 13 penalties, 89 yards. The Saints did go over 100 rushing yards, but I got to see more out of Alvin Kamara. Those are just a couple that stick out to me. Outside of that, I think today was a good indicator for what Saints fans can expect for the rest of the season. They're not going to, it's not going to be pretty wins. If they win a handful, it's going to be like today, where they grind it out. But ultimately, I think for the most part, if you were to talk to people like us that are, analysts or have written and covered the team for a while, or if you talk to the fans the realistic fans, I think a lot of them would have said that today is about right. It's about what people expected. Any final thoughts, Bob?
Kellen Moore, do better.
Okay.
I mean, really. The three, and we talked about it before we went on the air. To carry 3 timeouts with you at halftime, they stay in that locker room, Kellen. Rather they stay on the field. They don't even come with you into the locker room unless you're getting a bonus from Mrs. Benson on timeouts you don't use. I agree with you, Brendan, and I think a lot of Saints games, the ones that they're going to be in this year, are going to be a lot like this. Grind it out close to the vest, close scoring. If you're going to win those games, then you need better clock management and you need better trust in your players. Now, I believe why Kellen Moore just sat on those timeouts and let Arizona helplessly bleed them out at the end of the first half is because he didn't trust his quarterback. He didn't trust Spencer Rattler in a 2-minute situation. I disagree with that vehemently. I mean, we saw what Rattler could do at the end of the game, A, and B, if you have that little trust in your quarterback, then find somebody else to do it. Because you can't have it both ways. I'll give him a pass because it was his first game as a head coach, and there's so much more that goes into this, than when you're just on the coordinator, a coordinator version. And not that I'm discounting that job because that's hell, folks. But let's be real. A lot of you, if it was Dennis Allen that did that in that exact same situation, you might have stormed the field. So Kellen Moore, you deserve a pass for game one, but please, you got to, if the players on the field have to tackle better, execute better, contain better, and certainly show better discipline than 13 penalties, then you and your staff have to do better on the sidelines too.
I think my parting thoughts are, regardless of where you stand, even after today, with the quarterback situation, I saw some comments come in about Spencer Rattler. Some good, some bad. You got to support the kid. I do think there were moments of when he threw some passes.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think there were moments of, okay, I see it. You don't get to the NFL by luck. You don't start games in the NFL. Sometimes you start a game or two in the NFL by luck.
You say ASCII and book.
Yeah, I was going to say a guy that went to my high school, Connor Shaw, one career start for Cleveland. That was one year that Cleveland, I think, went through 4 or 5 quarterbacks too. But you don't start 7 NFL games by luck, right? 1 or 2, maybe even 3. You don't start 7 by luck. There's some talent there. And Kellen Moore told us why he's the quarterback, because he feels like he can help this team win now.
Well, then give him a chance to do it.
I agree. Bob and I both said we fully expect Shuck to get his chance as well this year. Mm-hmm. But whoever's under center for the rest of the year, 1, you got to live with it. But 2, let's be a little supportive of it and just see how it goes. Because
the Saints did not lose this game because of Spencer Rattler.
No.
Yeah, I mean, could he have played better?
Penalties and poor play calling at times. But no, this isn't a game where Spencer went out and threw like 4 or 5 picks. I mean, no interceptions. No touchdowns, but no interceptions. Like I said, very vanilla. It was so vanilla, they hurt themselves. We'll see if they're a little less vanilla next week. Bob, I know you got post-game thoughts that are going to come out in article form online.
Mm-hmm.
Where can people follow you, your articles, and your work between now and when they see us next on Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, folks that are tuning in live, or if you're catching this on the rebound, on the delay, the Bayou Blitz post-game show is sponsored by Get Checked or Check Out and the original Go Black and Gold Celebrity Charity Fan Cruise. Get Checked or Check Out is a wonderful charitable organization. Check out their website at tcynow.org. Be aware that September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. But so whether that's your concern or you have other health-related concerns, make those appointments, keep those appointments, ask questions. If you have any issues, if you have any concerns, that's what Get Checked or Check Out is there for. They will help steer you in the right direction as far as research, treatment, therapy, and just general answers, not only for the patient, but for the patient's family and loved ones. One of the ways they do that is through their charitable cruise, the original Go Black and Gold Celebrity Charity Fan weekend cruise run every year. The 2026 cruise is going to be March 26th through March 30th, sailing out of Jacksonville, Florida, docking in the Bahamas. Again, that's March 26th through March 30th, but cabins are going fast. It's a Carnival Cruise Line. You can book your room now with a small down payment through Summer Cochran at Seven Seas Travel. Summer's number is 985-643-6958. Again, that's 985-643-6958. If you have any questions at all about the cruise or about Get Checked or Check Out, you can find Summer, the Get Checked or Check Out page, Shireen DeWalt, or myself on Facebook. Please direct message me. I will answer any questions that you have to the best of my ability. As far as my post game works, they can be caught on the Saints Wire. My colleagues over there are already churning out their post game thoughts. But I'll have a good, bad, and ugly type of segment, as well as a game ball segment and some other thoughts. So make sure you check me out. My personal Facebook is Bob Rose. Twitter is at BobbyR2613, or you can just go directly over to the Saints Wire website on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube and catch any of that information as well.
For me, you can follow me below at BT Boylan. Make sure you give Bob and his work a gander today, or once you get in the office tomorrow, or have your cup of coffee. And people don't pick up a newspaper anymore, but do that. Pull out your old iPhone and have a cup of coffee while you're reading Bob's work. Or Bob doesn't like Apple, so as you pull out your Android, I know that made Bob a little happier to hear Android, but pull it out, have your cup of coffee before you head in to work in the morning. Until next week on Wednesday, hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, and we'll see you then for an episode of the Bayou Blitz podcast. Good night, Who Dat. We'll see you then.